Serious, Redditors who live in a van, on a boat, in a cabin off the grid, in a tent or a sleeping bag. Really everything except the usual four walls with ceiling and roof. What's your story? I spent the first 6 years of my life aboard a 31 feet sailboat. My dad was in the military and bought the boat rather than living on base. When he and my mom got together, it was easier for my mom to move aboard than it was for him to sell the boat. Then I was born. My parents moored in the Bay Area of California, and the rest was history. Growing up, I had basically the same experiences as everyone else, just in a slightly different way. Most kids had a swing in their backyard. My swing was mounted to the mast and swung out over the ocean. I had to wear a life jacket every time I used it, and never while we were underway. I had the same toys as everyone else, just fewer of them. Because my room was the V-berth in the boat's bow and space was at a premium, my mom still had to wrestle me into the bathtub on the regular, though my bathtub was a plastic bucket filled from the galley sink. Of course, living aboard, I had some experiences most folks never got to. Our marina was fairly deep and fairly quiet, meaning wildlife encounters were a nearly daily occurrence. Most were the usual beach wildlife, sandpipers and grebes and herons and the like. But every now and again we'd get an eagle ray, or a starfish wider than I was tall, or dolphins or porpoises or one very lost ocean sunfish. Whenever my parents got restless, they'd bring some extra groceries aboard and cast off for a long weekend underway. I learned early how to keep my balance when the waves got up, and to this day seem immune to seasickness. I wasn't as a kid, but that's another story. It's been 20 years now since I lived aboard, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Your writing style made reading that very pleasant. I'd read a book about your life on the boat, if you wrote one. I don't live in it anymore, but I moved out of my parents' house and into a buddy's van when I was 23, drove around, had a great time, eventually spent all my money by the time we hit Georgia, so I got a job and a normal place, and now I live in Georgia. He's still out riding that van, somewhere. You're making the two things I dream of sound so incredibly easy. It all started about 3 years ago, when my husband and I couldn't bear the thought of living in the Phoenix area for another summer. Friends of ours mentioned moving up to the Portland area, so we thought we'd take a road trip in a rented motorhome and stay long enough to check out properties. However, after calculating the cost of the rental, plus gas, plus a pet deposit for our 3 dogs, it would have been close to $7K for a month's worth of travel. We then thought that if we were going to spend $7K, why not just buy our own RV? Problem was, the $7K RVs were old, needed a lot of repairs, and had no extended warranties. So why not buy newer? So, we bought a 2-year-old, 30-foot Thor Ace. The monthly cost was about what a small mortgage would be, so we considered it our cabin on wheels. We took longer and longer distance road trips as our confidence levels grew, but then realized we could escape the heat by just driving 3 hours north of Phoenix and boondocking on BLM land, or national forests. We really fell in love with the Flagstaff and Williams area, kept going back there and staying in the woods for a week, then 2, then a month. Problem was, on long weekends and holidays, our favorite spots would get taken before we could get there. We decided to find our own land, where we would always have our spot. We bought 40 acres for $50K. At first, we were going to put in a slab, build a cabin, put in septic to empty our black tanks into, a cistern for water, run electricity in from nearby power lines. But we found that we really liked camping in different locations each time and didn't want to lock ourselves into one spot. We recently took out the RV's factory installed toilet, put in a composting toilet, no more black tank dump runs, installed an inverter and battery bank for solar panels, so we can watch TV, power our laptops and monitors for work. If we need to turn on the generator for the AC, it's only for an hour or 2 during the heat of the day. We have water delivered at the beginning of the summer, lasts us 4 months. Maybe once a week, we'll go into Williams or Flagstaff to buy groceries, refill our gas container, or eat at a restaurant with some of our new friends and neighbors, but 99% we just hang out on the property. I never thought I would be an off-the-grid kind of person, but turns out, this is my heaven on earth, and the best thing we have ever done for our health, happiness and mental sanity. Honestly, sounds dang amazing, and that's coming from a city boy. I lived in a teeny cabin 12 feet by 20 feet off grid because my best friends and I wanted to live in that part of the country, and we don't like most people, and the land was cheap and had a spring for our water. Now you would never know our homes are off grid except for the solar panels out back. I got kicked out of my apartment. I asked my buddy, who lives on a boat, if he knew anyone looking for a roommate or a tenant. He said he would ask around, but that I always had a place to stay with him on the boat. Now I live on a boat. I'm currently hiking the PCT, a 2,650 mile trail from the Mexican border to the Canadian border. So, I sleep in my tent most nights. Just past the 1,500 mile mark today actually. Dude, this is a long shot, but I have a friend who should be around 1,500 miles in right now. If you happen to meet a pair named Kamo and Squeak, tell them hi. They're great people. Broke up with a girl, moved apart, bought a van to be able to move all my stuff from there. Realized I now have a van and fixed it up to live in it. Now I live in my van. I did it for about 6 months this year in my old VW 70 camper. My partner and I had moved to a new city, but I couldn't find work there. I got a job 4 hours away, so started in February, staying in a pub car park and keeping warm using the burners. Moved into the woods in March and stopped there for 5 months. Best part was watching the sun go down through the trees, learning to juggle and smoking a doob. Worst bit was being made homeless by hornets on 2 separate occasions. Oh, and crapping in a bag. I lived on a 27 feet Ericsson for about 3 years. I was living in LA and a production manager I worked for lived on a boat, and it seemed like a cool idea. Got lucky with a find on Craigslist and saved a few thousand because the motor didn't work and the guy needed to sell it. Had a friend fix it for under $100 and some beer. Saved a ton of money not paying LA rent and went sailing every weekend. One of the best times of my life. Ended up selling it after making a few upgrades for way more and went backpacking in South America for a year with the money. Currently building a 2017 Tacoma and thinking about living out of it. 2017 Tacoma. Had no idea. Googled it. Wow, you guys really get a bang for your bucks. My car was half the size, thrice the age for half the price of a 2018 base model. Also, your experience sounds pretty cool. I get to comment. I live in a 1984 Dodge B250 camper van. Purely by choice, I should add. I was sick and tired of paying $1,200 or so towards rent every month and not getting anything out of it at the end. So I searched and searched for something that would fit my needs, and the van hits the spot. It's not exactly classy. It's a wood paneled ocean liner with shag carpet, but it's home. My beer is always within arm reach. I can move whenever I please and it's easy to clean. Also, my job pays me to live on my worksite with it, so it works out. My beer is always within arm reach. The important stuff is covered then. I've lived on some type of rubber for about 4.5 years. Love the freedom and the lifestyle. My dog has seen more of North America than most people I know. It's by choice and I can't see it ending anytime soon. Finally, something I can really answer. I built out a Sprinter van as a mobile home and office in February and have been living out of it ever since. I love it more than any other place I've lived. I started working remotely and freelance about 3 years ago and decided I'd rather travel than keep paying rent while I do my work. Everything runs on a large solar array that keeps my computer setup going strong. All winter I snowboard during the day and work at night. And all summer I travel from national forest to national forest, working during the week like normal and then hiking and doing other stuff on the weekends. I don't really have any motivation to get a girlfriend or settle down, so this lifestyle works well for me and my dog. I'm willing to answer any other questions for you. I plan on continuing this for the foreseeable future. Might be a bit personal, but I'm always curious how much something like that costs. Living rent-free and traveling is appealing, but I don't think I'd be able to save up the initial funds. Sounds amazing. I'm glad it's working out for you. I've been living in a travel trailer for the last 4 years. Started working on pipelines 6 years ago and was always on the road and decided it wasn't worth paying rent on a place I only saw an average of 4 days a month. Now I can live where I'm working and bank more lower versus staying in hotels, and I go wherever I want when I have time off. I've minimized what I own and waste less money on non-essential things due to a limit of storage space, which further saves money. Sometimes I do get myself a nice hotel room for a long, hot shower that lasts longer than 8 minutes, good Wi-Fi and cable though to spoil myself. I could have Wi-Fi and satellite in my trailer, but I just really don't miss it that much. You learn that YouTube is just a waste of time because it kills your data. There was a guy who worked for Google or one of the tech companies who decided to live in a panel truck in the company's parking lot. Like you, he realized he was paying a ton of money for a place where basically all he would do is sleep because he was working such long hours. I lived on boats for a while. I was a Bering Sea fisherman, and then I worked on super yachts. Cabins were about the size of a coffin. I live in a 1997 Ford E350 at the moment, and I must say I'm loving it. I was medically released from the Canadian Armed Forces and knew that I'd be moving to Winnipeg for me next job. I knew I didn't want to rent and throw my money away, and mortgages are far too expensive, so I figured the heck with it. I'll live in a bus. I gotta say I don't imagine anything better for me. I don't love in a tent anymore, but I used to in the Everglades. I was just young and I couldn't find anyone that would rent me. Ended up in a tent in a ranch and just took care of the animals in exchange of living on the property. Which was really cool because I love animals, but the owner of the property was a massive piece of crap. I grew up on a 100-year-old wooden tall ship with my father. Currently I'm working on a 172-foot white yacht that fishes in Alaska and Costa Rica. I have a guitar, clothes, and my Nintendo Switch. I'm happy. I live in a van that I turned into an RV. I rather live rent-free than constantly have to worry about bills. I live in Texas right now, so the heat is pretty bad during the day, but at night it's livable. I've got basically a full kitchen and I sleep in a hammock, so I'm not missing out on much. Plus it's an interesting talking point once people find out. There's a few things that you really have to adjust to though. The main one is showering at the gym or using public restrooms if the need comes up. Both can be included if you get a big enough van and are willing to sacrifice other aspects of your living space. If anyone has questions, just ask. I'm an open book when it comes to this stuff. Been living in it for about 4 months now. Every spring I move into the back of my truck, reinstall my 400 watts of solar panels and head to the mountains to look for elk antlers until about this time of year. 3 years ago my parents divorced, which turned my world upside down. Traveling was my escape to run away from my problems. Started in a trailer, downsized to the back of my truck. 3 years going strong so far, although the solitude got to me pretty bad this year. Next year wildland firefighting is the plan. I lived on a sailing yacht with my parents for my entire childhood, 17 years before going off to join the Navy. My dad was a surfer. His lifelong dream was to build a yacht and take his family with him to go into Indonesia and surf all the unknown reefs and live a simple life. So that's what we did. Dad built the yacht and it took him 13 years. In doing so he got a trade as a boat builder. We would sail until we ran out of money. We would stop where we were and Dad would build or fix some boats for a year or so, and then we would go off again in search of warmer climates and better surf. I didn't appreciate it as a kid. Felt like we were poor all the time and never had a car. But now I look back and I'm so thankful for the adventurous heart it has given me. I used to live out of the back of a truck. I had just graduated college and couldn't get a job. I didn't have anything better to do with myself, so I just sort of took off. I'd find a nice spot on BLM land, post up for a week, explore the area, then move along. I never really got that lonely and honestly really enjoyed it. I had to move back in with my parents when the money was completely gone though. I tried to find odd jobs to stretch supplies out, but I refuse to beg for money. Other people need it more than I do. I'm not paying my student loans with money that could have fed a truly homeless man. Okay, I'm reading this as Black Lives Matter land, but I assume that's not what you mean. I currently live on a 600 feet oil tanker. Before that I'll live on a 500 feet training ship. I've spent about 8 months of the last 4 years on sleeping on land. I did it for school, now I do it for work. Love it. Now that I'm working it's better, because it's a free bed to sleep in, and 3 meals a day. The longest part of my commute is getting dressed, and then I go look out a window for 4 hours, paint some stuff, then look out the window again. It's a good life. But it being the 4th of July, I wish I was out blowing stuff up and getting smashed with my friends. But here I am at anchor. I should be able to see 4 works tonight still though. I live in an 8x 12 feet house I built myself in the desert. I've got solar panels, but I haul water in from town as needed. Today I picked up 5 gallons on the way home from work. I'm sitting in air-conditioned comfort playing video games, watching TV, and watching my dog nap. I liked the area, land was cheap, and I thought building a house would be fun. It took me a month or so to build it, and it's got everything I need. A well would be nice, but I can buy water for the next 30 years for the same price as a well. A few years ago I quit my job, sold my home, and rode my bicycle around the world. After living that lifestyle for over a year, an apartment was just too much space for me when I got home. I slept on the couch in the living room most nights and hardly used the bedroom, so I downsized to living out of my car for a year or so. But I'd missed having a kitchen while on my bike trip, and I still missed it in the car. I watched land sales for a few months until I found something in my price range that I liked, and then got building. I'm pretty happy with what I have now. I can do neat things like build a solar powered heater for the house, or shoot trap in my backyard. Not having neighbors nearby is great. I lived in a tent for a 10-month period and a 6-month period before. The first time cause I was backpacking, with money. The second time because I was homeless, without money. The absolute worst part both times was how other people treated me. Very rarely did I have trouble sleeping, and I acclimated to the physical exertion and weather quickly. I was never bored and always happy until some stranger came up to ruin my day, or I had to beg someone to let into a supermarket to buy food. I did get a severe fungal infection in my ear during the second stretch in Hawaii though, so that was pretty horrible too. I live in an RV. Found myself needing both a car and a roof over my head, so I thought why not combine. I don't really want to live anywhere. I prefer to be on the move and sleep where I end up that day, not having to go back to a certain place. I also prefer not to have too much room, so that I won't accumulate too much stuff. I quit my job a few weeks ago and joined the Circus. I now work for Cirque Italia as a tent crew member and a part of the pre-show. I now live in a bunk that's pulled around by a semi. I lived in my 2001 4Runner for about 2 years. I had a full-size twin mattress in the back, plenty of space for the clothes and duffels bags I had, and just had a storage unit for some small stuff. I technically had a couple places I could live, but after a while I honestly just fell in love with living in my car. You could park and sleep anywhere you wanted. Packing and moving was easy. It was honestly just amazing. One funny story to it though. I was parked on a residential street one night when some guys were trying to break into cars around 1 AM. I was still awake and heard my car handle jiggle and looked out the window to see a guy in a hoodie. We locked eyes. He freaked out and ran and I jumped out of my car to go after him. I got out and found out it was 5 guys all together checking every car. When they all saw me they jumped in their truck and booked it, almost running me over. I literally had to jump out of the way. Now mind you, it was pouring rain that night. When they hit the main street they lost control and ended up driving the wrong way down the road to get away. I called the cops since I had their plate. Turns out the plate was stolen and put onto another car since it didn't match the make. I lived out of my car for 6 months when I left my mother's place. Honestly, it wasn't that bad at all. I actually rather enjoyed it. I parked in places around a nearby town in another state. Had a couple places I could go and surf the internet looking for jobs. Had a part-time job at the time, or just to get out of the heat. Walked around a lot exploring the area's forests. Discovered a few places I didn't even know existed, which was amazing. I've honestly considered doing it again. I live in a car. Last night was the first night I've slept indoors for a few months now because I was watching England at a friend's. Last night some tea smashed my rear left window and stole my guitar and skateboard. I love that guitar and it was my only form of income. I live in a car because I have mental health issues and I make bad decisions. I'm only freaking 27. Surely I shouldn't be homeless yet. The worst bit about sleeping in a car in the city is the noises. You get paranoid over everything. The worst part about sleeping out in the country is finding somewhere to crap where you are at being an butthole and ruining someone's land. Also, burying your own crap really makes you wonder how you fricked up life this much. I'm from Yellowknife, NT, Canada, right close to the Arctic Circle, a couple hundred km south of the tree line. In grade 3 my parents decided to build a cabin on a tiny island, 1/4 km long, that we leased the mining rights to and move us out there. It was about a 35-minute boat ride to the dock, across 2 lakes and a creek, and then a 20-minute drive to Yellowknife. About a 35-minute commute in the winter, when we plowed an ice road. In the shoulder seasons when the ice was too thin we either skidded or just stayed in town at a friend's until the ice either melted all the way or froze thicker. My dog got attacked by a pack of wolves. I saved him. We've had 2 almost bear attacks almost because of the loaded shotgun always in the closet. It sucked growing up there because I couldn't have a boyfriend or even really friends outside of school, because our commute was so long when you need to take a boat to town to see a movie, and you can't boat in the dark. Your options are limited. I also couldn't blow dry my hair or any other girly things because that needed a lot of electricity, so I didn't really do that until I moved out on my own into town. We are completely off-grid, pumped water from the lake, had a generator, windmill and solar panel for power, propane stove, dryer, fridge and lights. My stepfather got drunk and crashed his skidoo into our island a few years ago and died, and mom couldn't take care of everything herself so she moved into town with her new husband. The place is ours though, no mortgage or anything. They built a nice 2-bedroom place from scratch. It'll be a great vacation home for my kids. It used to be an old prospectors camp. There were some old tent frames there and we found some old garbage dumps with pop cans from like 60 years ago. If you want to see Aurora Borealis, go to Yellowknife. It's in the Auroral Oval and is one of the best and most accessible places to see the northern lights in North America. Give us your tourist monies. Buddy of mine is living the van life. When he said he was gonna do it, we all rolled our eyes because he'd always been the I'm gonna start this project give up halfway through guy. But he did an amazing job converting the interior into a living space. He's leaving next month to travel, so hopefully he'll have some cool stories. Not sure if it counts. I've lived in what most people consider third world countries for the last handful of years. Not an expat in a nice place on the beach maximizing my retirement, but in places with no internet, intermittent electricity, or water shut off daily, or even spending time in villages with no electricity or running water at all. I've slept in hammocks, utilized my wife's and my tent more than I ever thought, lived in countries with no shopping malls or movie theaters, learned how to make an oven without gas or electricity, learned to speak other languages, learned not to bat an eye and get scared over seeing snakes, scorpions, cockroaches, rats, etc. I don't have a crazy story. I had a business in the States. It did well but we weren't happy in the life, with the whole what are we doing with our life kind of thing. Neither my wife or I wanted children, or buy a house to settle down. So we sold everything and started volunteering in Central America, not for an go or a paid volunteer organization or anything, just on our own, and doing what we can to help, wherever we can help, mostly with time and effort more than with money and things. While the life has been far less luxurious, we are a million times happier, and feel a million times more fulfilled in life. Yes, those million times better are very scientific figures. I lived in a friend's barn loft for about a year before I got married. I was up in the loft above the barn actually, and it was one of the coolest places I have lived. I loved every single minute of it. It did get blazing hot in the summertime though, and there was no running water or bathroom out there, so I had to go into the main house in order to use the bathroom or kitchen. But the consolation prize was that the back end of the barn was falling down. So there was a gaping hole on the west end of the building that was big enough to drive a freaking car through. So I would go up to the edge and sit there with my feet dangling, and watch the sunset at night. And if I woke up in the middle of the night I would stumble over there and pee off the edge and try not to hit any of the livestock below. Somehow I never stumbled off the edge in my sleep, and when it rained, it was the most incredible sound. Not only would I hear the rain hitting the roof but I'd also hear it through the giant hole in the wall. Talk about relaxing. Ended up moving out of there to get married. Then lived with my wife for 4 years until we got divorced. 10/10 wish I had never left the barn. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.